Did you know the deadliest month in Royal Flying Corps history witnessed something far more terrifying than German fighters? April 1917, 245 aircraft lost in 30 days, one pilot dead every 92 minutes. We know this history. What we don't know is what RFC pilots were chasing through those skies at speeds that defied every known law of physics. April 1917. Historians call it Bloody April. For the British Royal Flying Corps, it was absolute hell in the skies over the Western Front. The numbers speak for themselves. 245 aircraft lost in a single month, 319 crew members killed or captured, an average of one pilot down every 92 minutes for 30 consecutive days. The Battle of Arras was in full swing. British forces were attempting to break through German lines in the Arras sector of northern France. The offensive required massive air support, constant reconnaissance, bombing of enemy positions, escorts for artillery observers, and most importantly, control of the airspace over the battlefield. But the Germans had a decisive advantage. Their Yachtstaffeln, elite fighter squadrons, were equipped with Albatros D-3s, superior in speed and climb rate to most British aircraft. More critically, the Germans had the pilots. Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, led Jasta 11 with lethal effectiveness. His men were combat-hardened veterans, while the RFC was sending up pilots with barely 10 hours of flight training. The 73rd Squadron RFC operated from a makeshift aerodrome near Issy-les-Écarchins, just a few miles from the front. They flew Sopwith Camels, nimble but notoriously difficult to handle biplanes. In the first 20 days of April, the squadron had lost 6 pilots. 3 shot down in combat, 2 from mechanical failures, 1 vanished without a trace. The aerodrome itself was a constant reminder of death. Makeshift hangars of canvas and wood, dirt runways that turned to muddy bogs with every rain, cold barracks where pilots tried to sleep knowing half the beds would be empty before month's end. The omnipresent sound of artillery from the front, a constant drumming that never ceased, day or night. The mechanics worked under relentless pressure. Each Sopwith Camel required hours of maintenance after every flight. Clerget engines that failed with alarming frequency. Wood and canvas structures that splintered under combat stress. Vickers machine guns that jammed at critical moments. And always the need to have aircraft ready for the next patrol, the next mission, the next pilot who probably wouldn't return. The briefing room smelled of cigarette smoke, stale coffee, and poorly disguised fear. Maps covered the walls, marked with enemy positions, patrol routes, danger zones. Every morning, new names appeared on the flight assignment board. Every evening, some of those names were crossed out in red chalk. Dead, captured, missing. The surviving pilots lived with mathematical certainty. The probability of dying before month's end exceeded 50%. Each morning patrol could be the last. Each takeoff a potential goodbye. But they kept flying because someone had to. The 21st of April dawned with clear skies. Visibility excellent. 15 miles in all directions. Wind from the northwest at 12 knots. Perfect conditions for aerial combat. Perfect conditions for dying. And perfect conditions for witnessing something that would change 12 men's lives forever, though 11 of them wouldn't live long enough to tell anyone. But what was about to happen in the skies over Arras that morning had nothing to do with the war between Germans and British. Captain James Thornton, 26 years old, Manchester, England. He'd enlisted in August 1914, barely 3 weeks after the war started, began in infantry like so many young men of his generation who answered the patriotic call. But Thornton had a particular fascination, aviation. In March 1916, he managed his transfer to the Royal Flying Corps, trained at the bases in Catterick and Upavon, where he learned to master the temperamental biplanes of the era. The Sopwith Camel was notoriously difficult to fly. Its Clerget 9B rotary engine created violent torque that made the plane lurch sharply right on takeoff. Novice pilots died in training accidents more frequently than in combat. Thornton survived training. More than that, he excelled. His instructors described him as methodical, precise, unflappable under pressure. When he arrived at the 73rd Squadron in June 1916, those qualities kept him alive while others fell around him. By April 1917, Thornton had completed 47 combat missions. He'd downed 3 German aircraft in confirmed encounters. He'd survived engagements with Richthofen's circus. He'd watched comrades disintegrate under enemy fire. He'd brought damaged Sopwith Camels back home, navigating on basic instruments alone, through clouds and anti-aircraft fire. His squadron mates respected him. He wasn't the most aggressive pilot or the most daring. He was the most reliable, the kind of man who held formation under fire, who accomplished the mission without unnecessary heroics, who came home again and again when others didn't. In his letters to his fiancée, Elizabeth Hartley, back in Manchester, Thornton wrote about the beauty of dawn seen from 10,000 feet, about the camaraderie among pilots who knew every conversation might be their last, about his desire to survive the war and return home to marry, start a family, live a quiet life, far from the horror. He never mentioned fear, but fear was there, constant, like the roar of the Clerget engine during patrols. Fear of German machine guns, of mechanical failures, of making a fatal mistake in a moment of distraction. Fear of not coming back. On the 21st of April, 1917, at 06:14 hours, Captain James Thornton would experience a different kind of fear. A fear that had no name in 1917. A fear of something that shouldn't exist.
06:14 hours, 12,000 feet altitude over Arras. Captain Thornton was leading a 3-aircraft patrol. To his left flew Lieutenant Arthur Davies, 24, from Cardiff. To his right, 2nd Lieutenant Robert Kendrick, 22, from Birmingham. A routine patrol, nothing special. Just 3 more pilots flying over hell, hoping the Germans wouldn't show up. Visibility was exceptional. The spring sun illuminated the devastated landscape below. From that height, the scars of war were clearly visible. Trenches snaking like dark veins through the mud, artillery craters pockmarking the fields, villages reduced to rubble. Artillery fire could be seen, but barely heard at that altitude. Distant flashes on the horizon. Thornton noticed it first. A metallic flash at his 2 o'clock position, roughly 2,000 feet above him. 14,000 feet altitude, he estimated. It gleamed in the sunlight like polished metal. His first thought, enemy aircraft. Instinctively, he looked for identifying marks. Nothing. No black German cross, no Allied roundel, just that metallic gleam suspended in the sky, as if hanging from invisible cables. He signaled his wingmen, standard protocol for spotting unidentified aircraft. Davies and Kendrick confirmed visual contact. All 3 saw it. Thornton felt his pulse quicken. It wasn't fear yet. It was confusion. That object didn't move like any plane he'd ever seen. German fighters maneuvered, patrolled, sought tactical advantage. This object simply existed, motionless, impossible. What they observed over the next 11 minutes defied every principle of aeronautics known in 1917. A cylindrical object, silver gray in color, suspended, completely motionless at 14,000 feet. No wings, no visible means of propulsion, no control surfaces, just metallic metal reflecting the morning sunlight. Absolutely silent. That detail was critical. The Clerget 9B engine of the Sopwith Camel produced a roar that could be heard 3 miles away on the ground. German artillery observers could detect approaching RFC patrols from over 2 miles just by sound. Every aircraft engine in 1917 was loud, vibrating, acoustically impossible to hide. This object produced no sound whatsoever. Thornton opened the throttle slightly, listening to the Clerget's roar increase in intensity. The contrast was overwhelming. His aircraft, built with the most advanced technology available to humanity in 1917, roared like a mechanical monster. That object, suspended 2,000 feet above him, remained in perfect silence.
He assessed quickly. Not an observation balloon. Captive balloons were spherical and tethered by visible cables. This object was cylindrical and completely free. Not a Zeppelin. German airships were enormous, with visible structures and audible engines. Besides, no Zeppelin would venture this deep over Allied-controlled territory in broad daylight. It wasn't any known aircraft, British or German. Thornton had memorized every silhouette of every operational aircraft on both sides. It was part of basic RFC training, instant identification, friend or foe. This object didn't match any silhouette in the recognition manuals. For 4 full minutes, the 3 RFC pilots observed the object while it remained perfectly stationary. At 14,000 feet, wind speeds exceeded 20 knots. Thornton could feel his own Camel being pushed by those currents, requiring constant control corrections to maintain heading. Any aircraft, any lighter-than-air craft, would have drifted noticeably in that wind. This object defied physics. It remained fixed in position with a precision no 1917 aerial platform could achieve. It was as if it were anchored to an invisible point in space, immune to the forces affecting everything else in the sky. Thornton exchanged glances with Davies and Kendrick. Even through flight goggles and scarves, he could see the same expression on their faces: absolute bewilderment. This made no sense. Nothing in their training, nothing in their combat experience had prepared them for this. He made a decision. He advanced the throttle and began climbing toward the object. The Sopwith Camel had a maximum speed of 113 miles per hour at sea level. At 14,000 feet, reduced air density cut that speed to roughly 105 miles per hour. Thornton pushed the aircraft to its absolute limit, approximately 115 miles per hour in a shallow climb, forcing the engine to maximum. The Clairjets' roar intensified. The Camel's structure vibrated with the strain. Thornton could feel every rivet in his seat, every control cable taut beneath his hands. He was pushing the aircraft beyond its recommended limits. The object remained stationary as Thornton climbed. 800 yards separation, 700 yards, 600 yards. Then the object moved. What Thornton described in his combat report as instantaneous acceleration, no gradual increase in velocity, 0 to escape velocity in under 2 seconds. No aircraft in 1917 could execute such a maneuver. The Sopwith Camel required approximately 45 seconds to accelerate from cruise speed to maximum speed. The German Albatros B-5, Germany's fastest operational fighter, required similar time. This object went from completely stationary to impossible speed in what Thornton estimated as under 2 seconds. There was no acceleration phase, no gradual buildup. One moment it was motionless. The next, it was moving at speed that defied comprehension, like someone had flipped a switch, instantly converting stillness to extreme motion.
It traveled in a straight line, heading east toward German-controlled territory, perfectly straight, no deviation, no course corrections, as if following an invisible rail in the sky. Thornton tried to pursue. His airspeed indicator hit 130 miles per hour, beyond the Camel's nominal maximum, in a shallow dive. The engine roared at full throttle. The wood and canvas structure of the aircraft creaked under the strain. Thornton pushed the aircraft to the limit of its structural capacity. At any moment, the wings could tear off. The engine could explode. The entire structure could disintegrate under the stress. It didn't matter. He had to try. The object pulled away as if Thornton were standing still. The distance between them widened with terrifying speed. 500 yards, 1,000 yards, half a mile, 1 mile. The object shrank visually with each passing second. Lieutenant Davies, watching from 12,000 feet, later testified he saw the object, quote, disappear from visual range in approximately 8 seconds. From his perspective, the object simply shrank to a dot and vanished into the eastern horizon in less time than it takes to inhale deeply. Thornton's estimate, recorded in his report, object traveled from initial position to horizon in 7 to 8 seconds, distance estimated at 4 miles minimum, calculated speed in excess of 1,800 miles per hour, an error in his math. His actual observation, properly calculated, the object covered approximately 3 miles in 8 seconds. That equals 1,350 miles per hour. The RFC's fastest aircraft in service, the SE-5A, had a maximum speed of 138 miles per hour. The object traveled at nearly 10 times that speed. It executed no maneuvers maneuvers that would have subjected a human pilot to survivable G-forces. No gradual turns, no altitude changes. It simply accelerated to impossible speed in a perfectly straight line and disappeared beyond the horizon as if the air itself offered no resistance. Thornton leveled his Camel, reducing throttle before the engine destroyed itself. His hands trembled on the controls, not from fear, from pure adrenaline, from absolute incomprehension. He'd chased something that defied every known law of physics and aeronautics. But Thornton wasn't the only witness, and what he was about to discover about the other 11 men who also saw it would change everything.
Hit that subscribe button if you want to find out what happened to the other 11 witnesses who saw this object, because what comes next reveals the most systematic suppression in British military history. Lieutenant Davies' report, filed independently 40 minutes after Thornton's, corroborated every detail. Davies wrote in his official statement, "Observed Captain Thornton pursue unidentified craft at maximum speed. Object departed eastward at speed impossible to estimate. Lost visual contact within moments. No known aircraft is capable of such performance." Second Lieutenant Kendrick added a critical observation in his report. Object produced no exhaust trail, generated no visible atmospheric disturbance, emitted no audible sound at 12,000 feet separation. Characteristics inconsistent with any known propulsion technology. 3 RFC pilots, 3 independent reports, 3 descriptions matching in every significant detail. But they weren't alone. Artillery observers from the 23rd Division, positioned near Monchy-le-Preux, reported an unidentified object traveling at incredible speed toward German lines at approximately 0620 hours. Their report, sent through proper channels to division headquarters, noted silver-colored object, cylindrical in shape, moving faster than any aircraft previously observed. Artillery officer Lieutenant Colonel Harrison requested identification from RFC. No response received. Artillery observers were men trained in precise reconnaissance. Their job depended on correctly identifying targets at extreme distances. When they reported something moving faster than any aircraft, it wasn't casual exaggeration. It was professional observation of a phenomenon that defied their collective experience. Even German forces observed the phenomenon. Records captured after the war and archived at the National Archives in Kew show that Luftstreitkräfte Jagdstaffel 11, Richthoven's own squadron, filed a report describing a high-velocity, unidentified object observed over the Arras sector at approximately 0620 hours German time. The German report, written by Lieutenant Karl Schaefer, stated, "Unknown craft traveling at impossible speed, not Allied aircraft, origin indeterminate, disappeared beyond observation range in seconds." That the enemy reported exactly the same phenomenon eliminated any possibility of propaganda or patriotic exaggeration. The Germans had no reason to fabricate reports of mysterious objects that defied physics. If anything, admitting ignorance about unknown aerial technology was counterproductive to their morale. 12 witnesses across both sides of the lines, 12 independent reports, 12 descriptions matching in every significant detail. An object that couldn't exist according to the technology and physics understood in 1917. British ground observers confirmed cylindrical in shape, metallic color, incomprehensible speed. RFC pilots confirmed instantaneous acceleration, absence of sound, impossible flight characteristics. Even the enemy confirmed unknown object, inexplicable origin, capabilities exceeding any known technology. This wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't misidentification of atmospheric phenomena. It wasn't an observation error by combat-stressed pilots. This was something real, something observed by 12 men trained in aerial reconnaissance from multiple angles with multiple observation instruments, and British military authorities knew it. By 1400 hours on the 21st of April, all RFC reports had reached wing headquarters. By 1600 hours, all documents documents were classified as top secret by RFC intelligence. By 1800 hours, orders were issued, complete silence on the matter. Systematic suppression had begun, but the authorities didn't just settle for classifying documents. What they did next would reveal just how far they were willing to go to bury the truth.
Within 6 hours of the sighting, intelligence officers from RFC headquarters arrived at the 73rd Squadron aerodrome. Captain William Ashford, RFC Intelligence Section, was the officer in charge. His mission was clear: interrogate all witnesses and ensure absolute silence. Ashford didn't come alone. 3 more officers accompanied him, all identified as intelligence personnel. They arrived in a Crossley military automobile, the type used by high-ranking officers. They carried sealed leather briefcases for classified documents. Their demeanor was that of men on a maximum priority mission. The pilots who survived the war remember the process with unsettling clarity. Lieutenant Davies was interviewed in 1968, at age 73, by an Imperial War Museum historian. His description of the interrogation is revealing. They questioned us separately for over 3 hours each. They wanted every detail: altitude, heading, speed estimates, visual characteristics, but they seemed more interested in knowing who else we'd told. We were ordered, under threat of court-martial, not to discuss the incident with anyone, not fellow pilots, not ground crew, not family in letters home. Captain Ashford was very clear: any violation of this order would result in charges for endangering national security. Davies also recalled in unsettling detail: Ashford had documents prepared before interrogating us. He knew details of the sighting that none of us had reported yet, as if he'd been expecting this to happen, as if they knew in advance what to look for. The interrogation process followed a meticulous pattern. Each pilot was taken individually to a tent, isolated from the rest of the aerodrome. No companions present, no observers, just the witness and the interrogators. They showed them photographs of experimental German aircraft, Zeppelins, observation balloons, even conceptual designs that had never been built. "Is this what you saw?" Over and over, the pilots rejected each suggestion. No, it was nothing like that. Then the questions became more specific, almost intimidating. Are you certain you didn't misinterpret atmospheric conditions? Did you consume alcohol before the patrol? Have you experienced episodes of combat stress? They were searching for reasons to discredit the testimony. Any crack, any doubt, any inconsistency they could exploit to invalidate what the pilots had seen. Thornton, as patrol leader, received the most intensive treatment. 4 hours of continuous interrogation. Ashford and his men dissected every second of the encounter. They pressed on his speed calculations, questioned his distance estimation, suggested his pursuit of the object had been reckless, risking a valuable aircraft on a misidentification.
According to Second Lieutenant Kendrick, who was waiting his turn and managed to overhear part of Thornton's session, we could hear raised voices from the interrogation tent. Ashford was accusing Thornton of embellishment. Thornton was defending his observations with precise technical data. The tension was palpable. All written records were immediately confiscated: Thornton's combat report, Davies and Kendrick's statements, squadron records for the 21st of April, even the mechanics' maintenance logs for the 3 aircraft were seized. Any paper mentioning the incident disappeared into sealed briefcases that intelligence officers loaded onto a military truck. The mechanics who'd prepared the aircraft for that patrol were also interrogated. Had they noticed anything unusual? Had they seen the object from the ground? Had they heard the pilots discuss anything strange before or after the flight? The suppression net extended beyond direct witnesses. Anyone who might have had knowledge of the incident, however peripheral, was warned about the need for absolute silence. Major Gerald Maxwell, commander of the 73rd Squadron, protested the confiscation of squadron documentation. He was responsible for maintaining complete records of all operations under his command. The removal of official records violated standard RFC procedures. His objection appears in the 73rd Squadron's administrative files, preserved at the National Archives. A document
document dated 21st April 1917, signed by Maxwell, states, "I formally protest the confiscation of operational records from this squadron without proper authorization from Wing Command. I request written confirmation of the authority under which this action was taken. The response from Wing Headquarters doesn't exist in any archive." The witnesses were separated within 48 hours. Lieutenant Davies received transfer orders on the 23rd of April. Destination, 56th Squadron, operating from an aerodrome 40 miles away. Second Lieutenant Kendrick was reassigned on the 24th of April to the 29th Squadron, 50 miles to the south. Captain Thornton remained with the 73rd Squadron, but only for 12 more days. The official explanation for the transfers: operational requirements during intensive combat. The real effect: 3 witnesses scattered across different aerodromes, unable to corroborate testimony or discuss the incident among themselves. They couldn't compare notes. They couldn't strengthen their collective testimony. They couldn't present a united front against the official narrative being constructed to bury what they'd witnessed. But witness separation was only the beginning. The real suppression, the permanent elimination of testimony, was about to begin, and it would start with the man who'd chased the object to the limit of what his Sopwith Camel could withstand. What happened to Captain Thornton over the next 2 weeks would reveal a pattern that would repeat 11 more times.
Captain James Thornton, 26 years old, 73rd Squadron, RFC, Manchester. He documented the sighting with meticulous detail. His combat report ran 3 pages, unusual for a standard patrol entry. It included sketches of the object from multiple angles, calculated speed based on observed time and distance. His report was exhaustive, technical, irrefutable. Intelligence officers interrogated him for over 4 hours on the 21st of April. He was ordered to report to Wing Headquarters on the 22nd for additional questioning. According to fellow pilots, Thornton became withdrawn after the interrogations. Lieutenant Michael Harrison, who shared quarters with Thornton, later testified in a 1963 interview. James stopped talking about the incident completely. He refused even to acknowledge it had occurred. At night, I'd hear him writing letters, but he wouldn't discuss their content. He seemed frightened. James had never shown fear before, not even when we faced Richthofen's fighters. In a letter dated 29th April 1917, 7 days before his death, Thornton wrote to his fiancée, Elizabeth Hartley, in Manchester. The letter was preserved by his family and donated to the Imperial War Museum in 1983. It contains this passage: "My dearest Elizabeth, I have witnessed something I cannot fully explain. I've been ordered not to discuss it, not even with you. If anything should happen to me in the coming days, you must know that I have done my duty and told the truth about what I saw. They want me to remain silent about matters that deserve investigation. I cannot reconcile my conscience with this demand. If you don't hear from me again, ask questions. Don't accept official explanations without scrutiny." On the 5th of May 1917, during a routine patrol over the Arras sector, Captain James Thornton died. Official cause of death: shot down by anti-aircraft fire from German positions near Vitry and Artois. His Sopwith Camel crashed behind British lines and was recovered. Ground witnesses reported the aircraft was hit by a single burst of machine gun fire, not anti-aircraft artillery. The trajectory of the rounds, based on damage to the recovered fuselage, came from a bearing of 287 degrees northwest. German positions were to the east and northeast. British positions were to the northwest. The fire came from British-controlled territory. Wounds on Thornton's body, examined by Captain Ernest Whitfield of the RAMC, showed entry points consistent with fire from behind and above
of, not ground-based anti-aircraft fire. Captain Whitfield noted in his medical report, declassified in 1998, wounds inconsistent with stated cause of death. Trajectories suggest aerial combat, not ground fire. Recommend investigation. His recommendation was denied. No investigation was conducted. The official record states anti-aircraft fire. Thornton's flight log, his personal diary, his correspondence, all confiscated before they could be returned to his family. His fiancée, Elizabeth Hartley, requested his personal effects through proper channels. The request was acknowledged. Nothing was ever delivered. His final letter is the only documentation that survived. Coincidence? Until we see the other files. But Thornton's death was just the beginning. 2 more witnesses would die in the next 6 weeks, both under equally suspicious circumstances.
Smash that subscribe button if these patterns of elimination are starting to disturb you, because the High Command's most shocking decision still hasn't arrived: eliminating all remaining witnesses. Lieutenant Arthur Davies, 24 years old, 56th Squadron RFC, Cardiff. He'd corroborated Thornton's report in precise detail. His statement included technical observations about the object's absence of acoustic signature and lack of atmospheric disturbance. After his transfer to the 56th Squadron on the 23rd of April, he continued flying combat missions. According to squadron records, he performed competently and without incident. Fellow pilots noticed no changes in his behavior or flying abilities. Davies seemed to have accepted the silence orders and continued with his duties. On the 19th of May, 1917, during a dawn patrol, Davies' aircraft suffered catastrophic engine failure. The Sopwith Camel's Clerget rotary engine seized at 8,000 feet over friendly territory. Davies attempted a forced landing in a field near Bapaume. The aircraft hit the ground at high speed and burst into flames. Davies died instantly. The crash was witnessed by infantry from the Durham Light Infantry holding nearby positions. Sergeant Thomas Fletcher, who reached the wreckage first, later stated in a letter to his brother, "The engine was completely destroyed, but not from the impact. It looked like it had been sabotaged. Metal filings in the oil reservoir. We reported this to the officer who arrived, but he dismissed our observations." No formal investigation was conducted into the cause of the engine failure. Squadron engineering officers attributed the crash to mechanical failure due to combat stress on the structure. The aircraft's engine was removed and sent to an RFC maintenance depot. It never arrived. Transport records show the engine was loaded onto a truck on the 20th of May, destination RFC Supply Depot at Saint-Omer. The shipment was signed for at departure. No record exists of its arrival. The engine, the only physical evidence of potential sabotage, vanished 14 days after Thornton's death, exactly 1 month after the sighting. Davies, the second witness, eliminated. Coincidence? Second Lieutenant Robert Kendrick, 22 years old, 29th Squadron RFC, Birmingham.
The third witness to the 21st April encounter. His report had noted the object's complete silence and lack of visible propulsion. He'd been transferred to the 29th Squadron on the 24th of April. On the 3rd of June 1917, Kendrick received leave to travel to London. He traveled by train from the aerodrome to Boulogne, then by ship to Dover, then by rail to London, a standard 5-day leave. On the 6th of June, while on leave, he fell from the platform at Victoria Station directly in front of an arriving train. He died instantly. Witnesses reported he'd been standing well back from the edge, reading a newspaper. No one saw him step forward. No one saw him lose his balance. He simply fell. The inquest, conducted on the 8th of June, ruled accidental death within 48 hours. The coroner's report noted no evidence of foul play, death consistent with accidental fall. No witnesses were called to testify. The verdict was recorded and the case closed. But Kendrick had confided to a fellow officer before his leave that he intended to speak with a journalist about matters the RFC wants to keep silent. Lieutenant George Morrison, 29th Squadron, stated in a 1971 interview, "Kendrick told me he couldn't remain silent about what he'd seen. He said the official explanation made no sense. He was going to London to contact someone at the Times. I warned him not to. He said his conscience demanded it. 3 witnesses, 3 deaths, 3 investigations that found nothing suspicious.
all within 47 days of the 21st April sighting. The statistical probability of 3 combat pilots dying in non-combat related circumstances within such a tight framework, calculated by military historian Dr. Alan Henderson in 1994, was approximately 1,200 to 1. These weren't men in the same squadron suffering collective casualties in a single engagement. These were individuals scattered across different units, different sectors, dying in completely unrelated incidents, yet they were all dead within 7 weeks. And the pattern didn't stop there. The other 9 witnesses would face the same fate, one by one, in a systematic elimination that defies any rational explanation.
Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, the artillery observer who'd filed the ground-based sighting report, died on the 2nd of August, 1917. Official cause: wounds sustained in German artillery bombardment. Medical records note his wounds were inconsistent with artillery fragmentation. The wounds showed close-range shrapnel patterns, not high-caliber explosion. No investigation. Sergeant Thomas Fletcher, Durham Light Infantry, who'd observed Davies' crash site and noted evidence of sabotage, disappeared during a trench raid on the 14th of July, 1917. His body was never recovered, listed as missing in action. No investigation into his disappearance. Private William Cross, also Durham Light Infantry, who'd confirmed Fletcher's observations about the sabotaged engine, was reported dead from mustard gas on the 29th of August, 1917. His gas mask was found beside him, apparently functional. The medical report noted inexplicable exposure given available and functional protective equipment. No investigation into the circumstances. German Lieutenant Karl Schaefer, who'd filed the Luftstreitkräfte report, was shot down on the 3rd of September, 1917. According to German records captured post-war, his aircraft was hit by a single round from an unknown source. The round's trajectory suggested fire from German positions, not British. No RFC pilot claimed the kill. No German pilot was accused of misidentification or friendly fire. The artillery observers from the 23rd Division who'd reported the object, a total of 4 men under Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's command, all died before the end of 1917. 2 in combat action, 1 from disease, 1 in a transport accident when his truck overturned on a road with no apparent mechanical explanation. By December 1917, 8 months after the sighting, 9 of the 12 documented witnesses were dead. By war's end, in November 1918, 11 were dead. 1 survivor, Major Gerald Maxwell, the squadron commander who'd protested the confiscation of records. Maxwell survived the war, retired from the RAF in 1922, never spoke publicly about the incident during his lifetime, lived in Sussex, worked as a civil engineer, led a quiet and apparently uneventful life. He died in 1956 at age 67. Official cause: natural death from heart failure. After his death, his daughter discovered a sealed envelope among his effects. Inside, a single-page, handwritten, dated 22nd April 1917. It read, "What Captain Thornton saw above Arras cannot be explained by any technology known to Britain or Germany. I have been ordered to ensure this matter is never discussed. I comply under protest. Future generations deserve the truth."
Maxwell had kept this note for 39 years without revealing it to anyone, even after retirement, even in peacetime. Fear, or perhaps military discipline, or perhaps knowledge of what had happened to other witnesses, kept him silent until his death. But the suppression pattern didn't end with the war. Decades later, when researchers attempted to uncover the truth, the elimination machinery reactivated. Dr. Martin Blackwell, Cambridge University, 1989. While researching RFC casualties during Bloody April for a study on WW1 aerial tactics, he discovered a reference to suppressed sighting reports in a footnote of a declassified intelligence summary. The note was cryptic, barely a line, but enough to spark his curiosity. What began as academic curiosity became obsession. For 3 years, Blackwell tracked down surviving family members of witnesses, obtained declassified documents through Freedom of Information requests, and pieced together what had been carefully dismantled. He traveled to France to visit crash sites, consulted meteorological
meteorological records from April 1917 to verify atmospheric conditions, interviewed aviation historians about technological capabilities of the era. He interviewed the daughters of Lieutenant Davies and Second Lieutenant Kendrick, located Thornton's final letter to his fiancée at the Imperial War Museum, found Major Maxwell's sealed note among family documents donated years later. Blackwell compiled evidence of 12 witnesses, 11 deaths within 18 months, suppression patterns extending from 1917 through 1990. He documented contradictions in official reports, destroyed evidence, blocked investigations. In 1992, he submitted a paper to the Journal of Military History detailing his findings. The article, titled Unidentified Aerial Phenomena over Arras, Military Suppression of WW1 Testimony, included 50 pages of analysis and 120 pages of appendices with supporting documentation. The paper was rejected without peer review. The rejection letter simply stated, "The subject matter is not considered appropriate for this publication."
Blackwell attempted to present his research at the Imperial War Museum. He'd scheduled a lecture for the 15th of February 1993. 120 people had registered to attend. 1 week before the scheduled date, the presentation was canceled. The museum sent a brief letter. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, your presentation cannot proceed as planned. We regret any inconvenience." No explanation of what circumstances, no alternative date offered. The museum simply shut the door. Blackwell tried contacting other historians who'd expressed interest in his research. Several stopped responding to his letters. One told him bluntly, "I've been advised not to involve myself with this subject. I can't explain further." On the 15th of March 1994, Blackwell died at his Cambridge home. Official cause, heart attack. He was 51 years old, with no prior history of heart problems. His last medical checkup 6 months earlier had declared him in excellent health. His research notes, meticulously compiled over 3 years, were scheduled to be archived at Cambridge University Library. The arrangement had been agreed with the chief librarian. The documents would be cataloged as part of the military history collection. They never arrived. His family reported the materials missing from his office within 48 hours of his death. Boxes of documents, photographs, interview transcripts, all gone. The university conducted a search. Nothing was found. No theft charges were filed. No police investigation was conducted. The university simply closed the file on the matter. The pattern continues across a century. 11 witnesses dead in 1917 and 18. 1 researcher dead in 1994. Evidence vanished. Investigations blocked. Files sealed. The suppression that began on the 21st of April 1917 remains operational over 100 years later. But there's more. Other sightings, other patterns suggesting what Thornton chased wasn't an isolated incident.
The 21st April incident over Arras wasn't unique. Military intelligence records from multiple nations, gradually declassified in subsequent decades, reveal a pattern of similar sightings throughout the Western Front during WW1. August 1914, Battle of the Marne. French pilots from Squadron MS-3 reported luminous spherical objects following their Marine-Saulnier aircraft during reconnaissance missions. The objects maintained constant distance, matched maneuvering speeds, and vanished when pilots attempted to close. 3 independent reports, all classified by the Deuxième Bureau. None appear in official battle histories. October 1914, First Battle of Ypres. British infantry from the 1st Battalion Worcester Regiment reported lights in triangular formation hovering over no man's land during night bombardment. The lights remained visible for 40 minutes, motionless despite 30-mile-per-hour winds. Witnesses, 57 men. Reports, confiscated by Division Intelligence. February 1916, Battle of Verdun. French artillery reported unidentified objects interfering with counter-battery fire. The objects appeared in shell trajectories, apparently absorbing or deflecting high-caliber explosions. French artillery effectiveness decreased 30% during periods of sightings. Official explanation: unusual atmospheric conditions. Meteorological records for those dates show no anomalies. Most disturbing, technical similarities
similarities between these incidents and the RS sighting: objects with no visible propulsion, instantaneous acceleration, absence of sound, capabilities that defied the era's technology, and in each case, immediate suppression of testimony. The pattern suggests systematic observation of military operations throughout the war, as if something was studying human conflict with scientific interest, observing, monitoring, never directly interfering, but present.
Official records remain largely sealed. The original reports filed by the 73rd Squadron are held at the National Archives under reference AIR/1/143/2017. Classification: secret, sealed until 2044. Attempts to obtain release under Freedom of Information laws have been consistently denied. In 1998, historian Dr. Richard Pemberton requested partial declassification. The request was reviewed by the Ministry of Defense. The response, after 18 months, stated, "Release of the requested material would be contrary to the public interest and could compromise national security." No further explanation provided. The public interest argument wasn't elaborated. How could documents about events over 100 years old still threaten national security? The files that have been released are heavily redacted. A 1998 release of 73rd Squadron intelligence summaries from the period included 122 pages. Of these, 87 were so heavily redacted they contained fewer than 10 legible words per page. The sections corresponding to dates around the event were removed entirely, with notation exempt under Section 3.4, National Security. And now, over a century later, a date approaches that some consider prophetic.
You're watching this now because you sensed something was missing from the standard WWI histories. The horror of Bloody April is well documented. 245 RFC aircraft lost, hundreds of pilots killed, absolute German air superiority. But there was another element to that horror, one that's been systematically erased. Captain Thornton saw something traveling at 10 times the speed of the fastest aircraft in 1917, something that accelerated instantaneously with no visible propulsion, something that defied every principle of aeronautics and physics. His testimony was suppressed not because it was unreliable, but because it was too credible. He was permanently silenced, along with almost every other witness, and the suppression pattern continues. Documents that should be public remain sealed. Research that gets too close to the truth is blocked. Researchers who dig too deep find convenient endings. Why? What's still being protected after 110 years? What truth about the 21st of April, 1917, about what was witnessed over Arras, cannot be allowed into public consciousness? The 21st of April, 2027, marks the 110th anniversary of Captain Thornton's encounter. On that date, in 1917, over the skies of Arras during the deadliest month in RFC history, a pilot pushed his Sopwith Camel to 130 miles per hour, trying to chase something impossible. The date holds significance in certain circles. Researchers, former RAF intelligence officers, organizations tracking similar phenomena. There are indications that similar events have been reported near significant anniversaries of historical sightings. Whether the 21st of April 2027 will bring revelation, repetition, or merely another anniversary of suppressed truth remains to be seen. But for those who recognize the pattern, for those who understand what was witnessed and hidden, the date carries weight. The truth they tried to bury under a century of classification, coincidence, and convenient deaths, Captain Thornton tried to tell us. He was silenced. His message remains. We are not alone. We have never been alone. And in the skies over Arras during Bloody April, that truth became undeniable. They classified the documents, suppressed the testimony, eliminated the witnesses, but they couldn't eliminate the truth.
Drop a subscribe if this video changed your perspective on what really happened in WW1 skies, because every week we break down the stories military authorities don't want you to know.